My firefighter husband sent the only rescue boat in our sector to his ex-girlfriend while floodwater climbed over the windows of the car where our 6-year-old son and I were trapped. He knew her building had 3 dry floors above her. He knew our car was moving. I heard both facts over the dispatch channel before the water reached my son's chin. My name is Maya Ortiz. I lived in San Antonio, Texas, and worked as a civil engineer specializing in stormwater systems. That detail became useful later when people tried to describe what happened as an unpredictable flood. The rainfall was extreme, but the danger was not mysterious. Water follows elevation, drainage capacity, and gravity. Decisions follow people. My husband Lucas was a lieutenant with the city fire department. He had spent 14 years rescuing strangers. He was respected for remaining calm in chaotic scenes, and I was proud of him. At school events, parents asked my son, Theo, whether his father drove the big red truck. Theo always answered, "Sometimes he drives the boat." The department kept inflatable rescue boats on trailers for flash floods. Lucas had completed swift water certification after a series of deadly storms. He knew more than most people about how quickly a vehicle becomes a coffin once water lifts the tires. He had taught me the rule himself: turn around, do not drown. If trapped, unbuckle early, open a window while power remains, move children first, and never wait until the car is fully submerged. I followed every rule except the first one, and even that was not a choice I understood I was making. The underpass on Culebra Road was open when I entered it. There were no barricades, no standing water at the north approach, and 3 cars ahead of me passed through safely. Then a retaining wall failed upstream. A brown wave rushed across the intersection behind us and filled the dip from both sides. The SUV in front of me stalled. I stopped, reversed, and felt the rear of my car lift. Theo was in the back seat wearing his school field day shirt. He had spent the drive telling me that his class won the tug of war. When the car rotated, he stopped talking. "Mom, why are we moving?" "Because the water is strong. I need you to listen exactly." I lowered both windows. Rain blew inside. I unbuckled Theo, pulled him forward, and called 911 on speaker. The dispatcher already knew about the underpass. She told me a rescue unit was 6 minutes away and asked whether I could climb onto the roof. The current pinned the driver's side against a concrete divider. The passenger door would not open against the water pressure. I pushed Theo toward the open window, but the car shifted again and struck a signpost. He screamed and wrapped both arms around my neck. "The boat is coming," I told him. I believed that because I heard Lucas's voice on the dispatcher's radio. The 911 operator kept me connected while coordinating with fire dispatch. Her console audio bled through the phone. Unit 27 had launched 1 inflatable boat from a shopping center lot upstream. Lucas was incident commander for the Western Flood Sector. Culebra Underpass, occupied vehicle 1 adult female and 1 6-year-old male, a dispatcher said. "Vehicle floating against barrier," Lucas answered. "Copy. Boat 27 to Culebra." I closed my eyes for half a second. My husband knew. Our son would see his father arrive through the rain. Lucas would lift him into the boat, wrap him in a yellow blanket, and later we would all shake when the danger had passed. Then another call entered the channel. A woman was stranded at the Riverstone Apartments less than a mile away. The first-floor parking garage had flooded. She was on the 3rd-floor balcony of a 4-story concrete building. No fire, no collapse, no medical emergency. Her name was Celeste Morgan. Lucas and Celeste had dated in college and remained close after their breakup. Celeste was married when I met Lucas, then divorced during the 3rd year of our marriage. After that, she began calling him more often. She called about electrical outlets, a custody dispute, a bat in her attic, and once because rainwater had entered her garage. Lucas said their history made him feel responsible for her. When I asked what part of adult friendship required him to be available at midnight, he said Celeste had supported him after his father died. The sentence appeared in different forms throughout our marriage. She had been there when things were bad, so he could never tell her no. On the dispatch audio, Celeste told 911 she was afraid of water. She said her phone battery was low and she could see cars floating below. The operator told her to remain on the 3rd floor and move higher if necessary. Lucas came over the channel. Boat 27, divert to Riverstone, possible trapped resident with severe panic response. The boat officer questioned him. "Command Culebra vehicle is mobile with child inside. Riverstone caller is above water on 3rd floor. Confirmed diversion." "Confirmed," Lucas said. "Riverstone first." The dispatcher said my vehicle had shifted another 15 feet. Lucas answered, Culebra occupants have open windows. Tell them to self-extricate if able. I screamed his name into the phone. The 911 operator told me he could not hear my side of the call. I asked her to tell him it was Maya and Theo. She did. There was a pause on the radio command. Did you copy identities? She asked. Lucas said, Copy. Continue diversion. That was the moment my marriage ended, although I did not understand it yet. The legal papers came months later. The ending happened in 3 syllables over a radio. Continue diversion. Water entered over the rear windows. The front of the car caught against the divider while the back swung into the current. Theo was crying so hard he could not breathe evenly. I told him to look at my face. We are getting out without the boat. I removed the metal headrest and tried to break the remaining glass. Modern side windows are often laminated, and the headrest post only starred it. I used the emergency window punch attached to my keychain. The first strike failed because my hand shook. The second created a small hole. I kicked until the passenger window folded outward. The current exploded into the car. I pushed Theo through the opening and held the back of his shirt. The roof was already tilted. I climbed after him and wrapped one arm through the luggage rack. My other arm held Theo against my body. The signpost bent. Our car broke free. For perhaps 6 seconds, we rode the roof like a piece of debris. The water carried us toward a drainage channel where the current narrowed and accelerated. I saw a school bus on higher pavement near a tire shop. Its driver had stopped before the underpass. A man stood in its doorway holding a red tow strap. He threw it once. It landed short. He pulled it back while the bus driver moved closer to the flooded edge. On the second throw, the strap struck my shoulder. I looped it around the luggage rack. The car turned sideways and slammed into a light pole. The rack tore partly free, but the strap held long enough for 2 men to reach us along the guardrail. One took Theo. The other grabbed my coat just as the car rolled onto its side. I watched it disappear into the channel. The rescue boat arrived at Riverstone 7 minutes later. Celeste was still on her 3rd-floor balcony. Firefighters entered through the dry rear stairwell and escorted her down without using the boat. Boat 27 reached Culebra 21 minutes after the original dispatch. By then, Theo and I were inside the school bus. He was wrapped in a football blanket someone had found in a gym bag. I had a cut across my palm and bruises from my shoulder to my hip. Lucas arrived in a command truck. Theo ran to him before I could stop him. Lucas dropped to his knees and held our son, repeating, "You're okay. You're okay." He looked over Theo's shoulder at me. Relief crossed his face as if our survival had resolved the question of his choice. "Why did you send them away?" I asked. People nearby became quiet. Lucas stood. Celeste reported that the building was failing. No, she didn't. I heard the call. Dispatch information was incomplete. The boat officer told you she was above the water. He told you our car was moving. You confirmed after they gave you our names. He glanced at the firefighters around us. This is not the place. It was the place when you decided we could self-rescue. An ambulance took Theo and me to University Hospital. He had swallowed dirty water and developed a cough, but his oxygen level remained stable. My hand needed 8 stitches. Lucas arrived after midnight because he stayed at the flood command post. He brought Celeste with him. She stood behind him in a dry department sweatshirt and said she needed to apologize. I asked a nurse to remove her. Lucas became angry. She has been through something traumatic. Our son was inside a floating car. I know that. You knew it then, he said. Incident commanders make decisions with limited information. He said Celeste had a known trauma response and might have jumped from the balcony. He said the boat was the fastest way to assess the building. I asked why the engine company already behind Riverstone could not use the dry stairwell. He said I was using hindsight. I was using the radio call I had heard in real time. The department announced a routine review because a civilian video of our rescue had gone viral. The school bus driver, Mr. Hanley, had mounted a camera near the windshield. It recorded the car entering the underpass while the road was clear, the sudden wall of water, and the 21 minutes before boat 27 arrived. It also recorded the driver asking dispatch twice where the rescue boat was. At first, Lucas expected the review to support him. He had spent years inside a culture where difficult choices received deference. What he did not expect was that every part of the flood response had been recorded. The 911 calls showed Celeste had never claimed structural failure. She said, "Lucas will come if you tell him it's me." The operator replied that units were assigned based on danger, not identity. Celeste then called Lucas directly. His county phone logged a 2-minute conversation before he issued the diversion. The call was not recorded, but messages afterward were. Celeste wrote, "I knew you wouldn't leave me here after what happened to Aaron." Lucas answered, "I promised I never would." Aaron was Celeste's younger cousin. 17 years earlier, he drowned during a tubing trip attended by both Celeste and Lucas. Lucas had gone downstream to retrieve a cooler while Aaron entered the water without a life jacket. The death was not Lucas's fault, but Celeste told him for years that if he had stayed, Aaron would be alive. Lucas built a private duty from that accusation. He never told me about it. The review found something worse. Celeste had sent Lucas a photograph from her balcony 4 minutes before the diversion. The image clearly showed the dry third-floor hallway behind her and several residents standing calmly inside. Lucas replied, "Stay there. I am moving the boat to you." He possessed better information than the dispatcher and used it to make the risk appear greater. When investigators interviewed the Boat 27 officer, Captain Dorsey said Lucas overrode him after he raised the priority conflict. Dorsey asked permission to continue to Culebra while an engine checked Riverstone. Lucas refused and cited command authority. The department placed Lucas on administrative leave. At home, he alternated between apology and defense. He told me he panicked when he heard Celeste's voice. He said memories of Aaron made him feel 19 again. He said he never thought the car would fully submerge because it was caught on a sign. "You teach people that moving floodwater can tear a car away," I said. "I was trying to manage 2 scenes. You managed hers by abandoning ours." He began to cry. "I knew you knew what to do." Again, my competence had been used as permission. I thought about every night he left to fix something at Celeste's house because I could handle Theo's fever alone. Every holiday when he answered her call because I was surrounded by my family. Every boundary he called jealousy because my reliability made his disloyalty convenient. The flood had not created the hierarchy. It had only attached water levels and timestamps to it. I asked Lucas to leave the house. He stayed with his brother and told Theo he was working nights. I hired an attorney, Diane Shaw, who requested preservation of dispatch audio personnel records in the county phone. Lucas accused me of threatening his career. Diane answered for me. His recorded order was the threat to his career. The department sustained charges of neglect of duty, misuse of command authority, falsification of incident rationale, and failure to follow swiftwater triage. Lucas was demoted 2 ranks and suspended without pay. The State Fire Commission later suspended his incident command credential for 18 months. He kept employment as a firefighter only after the union negotiated a last-chance agreement. Captain Dorsey resigned from Boat 27 and later testified in my civil case. He told me he replayed the diversion in his mind for weeks. "I should have refused," he said. "You questioned him." Questioning was not enough when I knew the order was wrong. His willingness to accept his part contrasted sharply with Lucas's need to distribute blame among the storm. The dispatcher, Celeste's panic, and my decision to drive. Celeste gave a television interview without naming us. She said trauma makes people behave in ways outsiders cannot judge. 2 days later, the station aired the portion of her 911 call where she said Lucas would come if they used her name. Public sympathy changed. She sent me a message saying she never asked him to leave a child in danger. I replied with a screenshot of her photograph from the dry balcony and his promise to move the boat. Then I blocked her. Theo struggled after the flood. Bathwater frightened him. He asked whether cars could float during sunny weather. For months, he slept with the football blanket from the bus. A child therapist helped him draw the sequence of what happened. In his first drawing, Lucas stood in a boat beside another building while Theo and I were blue shapes in a black car. Lucas saw the picture during a parenting session and left the room crying. I did not enjoy his pain. I wanted it to become information he could no longer avoid. We divorced the following spring. Lucas asked for equal custody. Diane argued that his judgment had placed Theo in direct danger and that he initially lied about the incident. The final plan began with supervised daytime visits, then expanded after he completed therapy and a parenting evaluation. Emergency decisions required written notification whenever possible. The civil settlement paid for Theo's therapy, my lost work, and the replacement of the car. I donated part of it to the school district's emergency transportation fund in honor of Mr. Hanley. He told me he had simply stopped because the road looked wrong. That sentence stayed with me. He was not trained in swiftwater rescue. He had no badge or command title. He saw a danger and moved toward the people inside it. Lucas had every credential required to understand the scene and moved the boat away. The civil process exposed parts of our marriage that the department review considered irrelevant. Diane subpoenaed bank records after learning Lucas had paid for repairs at Celeste's house. Over 4 years, he had transferred more than $21,000 from a business account we used for household savings. Some payments were labeled emergency assistance, others were sent directly to contractors. Lucas said the money repaid Celeste for funeral expenses her family covered after Aaron drowned. No written agreement existed. Celeste used part of it to renovate her balcony, the same balcony where she stood dry while Boat 27 diverted from us. The financial betrayal did not equal the flood, but it explained how Lucas practiced making our shared resources answer to an old guilt. I had thought we were postponing a kitchen renovation because overtime income varied. In reality, he was funding repairs to the home he rushed to rescue. During deposition, Celeste said she never demanded money. Diane showed her a message saying, "If you can afford a family vacation, you can finish paying what your father promised after Aaron." Lucas's father had never made such a promise. Celeste admitted she used the language because it made Lucas respond. "Did you believe Mr. Ortiz was responsible for your cousin's death?" Diane asked. "Not legally." "Did you allow him to believe he was morally responsible?" Celeste remained silent long enough that the court reporter asked whether she had heard. "It kept him from forgetting Aaron," she finally said. That sentence helped me understand why she called during every crisis. She did not merely need help. She needed the old event to remain active between them. Each rescue renewed both his guilt and her influence. Lucas listened to that testimony from the opposite side of the table. On the drive home, he left me a voice message saying he had never realized how deliberately Celeste used the death. I did not return the call. Manipulation explained pressure. Not his authority, she could ask. He still commanded the boat. Theo's therapist encouraged us to create a factual book about the flood. We printed photographs of the underpass gates, the school bus, the red strap, the hospital, and our new car. One page showed Boat 27 at Riverstone. Theo dictated the caption. "Dad's boat went to the building because Dad made a wrong choice. Then Mr. Hanley and other people helped us." Lucas wanted the caption changed to say the boat was delayed by confusion. The therapist asked Theo which version matched his memory. "Dad knew our names," he said. That ended the discussion. At the first supervised custody exchange, Theo refused to enter Lucas's car because rain had started. Lucas knelt beside him in the parking lot and promised they would avoid low roads. Theo asked whether Celeste might call. Lucas had no quick answer. The supervisor wrote down the entire exchange. After that, Lucas created a written emergency plan for every visit. He listed routes, alternate contacts, and a rule that any call from Celeste would be redirected to 911. For several months, he treated the paperwork as a performance required to regain custody. Then one afternoon, Celeste actually called while Theo was with him. She reported a kitchen burn. Lucas called 911, notified the supervisor, and did not leave. The burn was minor. The important outcome was that nothing dramatic happened. Lucas did not need to be the rescuer. Celeste received appropriate care. Theo completed his visit. Ordinary boundaries succeeded where years of personal heroism had failed. I learned about the incident through the parenting app. I felt relief, followed by grief. The correct choice had been so simple. If he had made it at the underpass, we might still have been married. Growth can be genuine and still arrive after the person who needed it has gone. The department hearing drew firefighters from across the city. Some supported Lucas and argued commanders must be protected from hindsight. Others worried his case would be used to attack all discretionary decisions. Captain Dorsey answered that discretion depends on accurate facts. "This is not a case where two scenes looked equal," he said. We told command they were not equal. The child was in moving water. The adult was above the water. The problem was not uncertainty. It was an order that ignored certainty. The union stopped defending the triage decision after that. It focused on preserving Lucas's employment if he accepted demotion. He did. Publicly, he said he respected the process. Privately, he told me the department had made him a symbol to protect itself. "You made yourself a symbol when you used a recorded channel to choose Celeste," I said. "We sold our house during the divorce. I worried that moving would create another loss for Theo, but he chose a townhouse on higher ground because its street had no drainage channel. He taped a hand-drawn flood map beside his bedroom door. For a year, he checked the weather before sleep. I did not tell him to stop. Safety rituals can be bridges before they become cages. With therapy, the map moved from the door to a drawer, then into the factual book. Mr. Hanley retired from the school district. At his ceremony, the superintendent mentioned the flood rescue. He redirected the praise to the students who remained calm on the bus and the 2 motorists who helped with the strap. He later told me he had been afraid the bus would slide if he moved closer. I did not know the right distance, he said. I just knew doing nothing was the wrong one. That humility stood beside Lucas's credentials in my mind. Expertise is valuable, but it becomes dangerous when a person uses it to explain why obvious facts should not bind him. 2 years later, the city installed automatic floodgates at the underpass. I served on the engineering review panel. The project included upstream sensors that lower barriers before visible water reaches the road. At the dedication, a reporter asked whether the gates made me feel that something good had come from the flood. I said the gates were good. The flood was still bad. We do not have to call suffering useful before we improve the system that allowed it. Lucas eventually regained his credential but never returned to incident command. He became a training officer and now uses an anonymized version of the case to teach priority discipline. I learned that from Captain Dorsey, not from Lucas. The first training draft called the incident a competing flood rescue. Dorsey asked that it be renamed an unsupported diversion. He understood that words shape what trainees believe happened. Competing suggests equality. The recorded facts did not. Lucas invited me to review the material. I agreed only if the department sent it through official channels. The case timeline was accurate, but one slide said the commander's family connection increased emotional stress. I asked them to add that the commander's connection to the second caller also increased bias. Focusing only on me would have made family a distraction instead of the very public duty he violated. The final exercise pauses the audio after dispatch identifies us. Trainees must write the next order before hearing Lucas say continue diversion. Dorsey told me every class sends the boat to Culebra. The answer is not difficult when the names do not belong to someone in the room. I wondered whether that made Lucas's later teaching hypocritical. My therapist said a person can become a credible warning because he failed, as long as he does not use teaching to claim the failure is repaired. I never asked which motive drove him. The class benefited either way. Theo's relationship with Lucas improved gradually. At 9, he began spending alternate weekends without supervision. The first time heavy rain started during a visit, Lucas pulled into a library on high ground, sent me their location, and waited for the warning to pass. Theo called me from the children's section. "Dad stopped before the water," he said. His voice contained surprise. That hurt, but it also marked a new memory. I did not tell him everything was fixed, I said. That was the safe choice. We learned to praise the decision without making it erase the old one. Celeste moved away after selling her house. Before leaving, she mailed Theo a gift card and an apology addressed to him. Diane reviewed it. Celeste wrote that adults had let old grief become more important than his safety. She did not ask him to forgive her. Theo chose not to respond. We placed the card in his therapy folder. Acknowledgement belongs to the person receiving it, not the person sending it. During one custody exchange, Lucas told me he says a sentence to every new class. Familiarity with a victim can distort urgency in both directions. "Does that help?" he asked. "It may help the next family," I said. He nodded. There was a time when his remorse would have pulled me toward him. By then, I understood that remorse is not a bridge another person must cross. It belongs first to the person who caused the harm. Theo is 10 now. He swims, though it took years before he put his face underwater willingly. Mr. Hanley attends his birthday parties. The red toe strap hangs coiled in our garage because Theo asked to keep it to him. It is proof that someone came. I kept one other recording, the dispatch audio. I do not play it often. For a while I listened whenever I began doubting whether divorce had been too final. The words always returned me to the correct moment. The dispatcher identified a moving vehicle with a child inside. The boat captain identified the safer scene. I identified myself and our son. Lucas received every fact required to choose. He chose Celeste anyway. People sometimes ask whether I forgive him. I no longer find that question useful. Forgiveness suggests my healing waits for a verdict about his soul. It does not. I can recognize his guilt. acknowledge his later work, and still refuse to rebuild a marriage around the hope that the next emergency will make me matter. Floodwater is powerful because it turns small changes into force. A few inches can move a car. A few seconds can close an escape. A single order can send help in the wrong direction. But small actions can gather force too. A bus driver stops. A stranger throws a strap. A captain tells the truth. A mother breaks a window because waiting is no longer safe. Lucas once told me rescue was the art of bringing calm into chaos. The flood taught me something he had forgotten. Calm without loyalty is only control, and authority without honest priorities can become another current pulling people under. Theo and I survived because I stopped waiting for the person who had promised to rescue us. The water took our car, our sense of safety, and the version of my marriage I had defended for years. It did not take our future. The future began on the roof of that sinking car, with my son's arms around my neck and a red strap flying through the rain from someone who did not know our names, but understood that we were the people who needed help first. Every spring, Theo and I inspect the strap. Sunlight has faded it from red to rust. Mr. Hanley says we should replace it if we plan to use it, but Theo does not consider it equipment now. It is part of the record. The working rescue strap in my car is new, rated, and stored beside a window hammer. The old one stays in the garage, holding nothing and proving everything.